Washington upsets Oregon 37-34. This was a game that I was really confident in Washington being able to cover. However, if you would have told me that Washington was going to outright beat Oregon on the road, I wouldn't have disagreed with you. But at the same time, I would have had a hard time seeing that go down. But it happened. Micheal Penix had a fantastic performance, and Bo Nix played well. Bo Nix has been the talking point of the Pac-12 conference all year. He pretty much has been the king of the Pac-12. And yet, not enough people are talking about the kind of season that Micheal Penix has had with the Huskies. And let's not forget about where Micheal Penix was in his career prior to arriving in Washington. He was at Indiana for the last couple of seasons. He was dealing with injuries. And outside of that 2020 campaign, he didn't really look all that great. He gets to Washington with Kalen DeBoer. They have some familiarity with each other, and things click. He's being able to stay healthy. Not only that, but in this game, Micheal Penix showed some mobility. And I was really surprised when I saw Micheal Penix running for a first down in this game. I knew he had some mobility in him, but I thought after the injuries that he sustained over the course of his time at Indiana, I kind of thought that aspect of his game was gone. But he showed some wills in this game. On top of that, his arm strength once again was on full display. He threw a pass right by an Oregon safety. And the Oregon safety wasn't in bad position per se. It just was an incredible throw. There are not too many quarterbacks alive right now that have the kind of arm talent that Micheal Penix possesses. A lot of people keep talking about Will Levis. I don't really see the hype, honestly. If you're looking at a quarterback who needs a little bit of development but has a lot of potential, great arm, a little bit of mobility, Micheal Penix is your guy. And I think as we progress throughout the remainder of this season and we get closer to the NFL Combine and the NFL draft process, more people are going to start talking about Micheal Penix. But he had a fantastic performance in this game. And he's had fantastic performances all year long for the Huskies. I was really impressed with how not only he responded, but how this team responded in the face of adversity in this game. Late in this game, Micheal Penix threw an interception inside of the red zone. A really bad one, too. And Washington's defense, surprisingly, they only hold Oregon to a field goal. And this was after Oregon just engineered a 10-minute drive. They had the ball for 10 minutes, and I'm just watching, and I'm just like, oh my goodness, Micheal Penix. You just sold the game. Your defense is not going to be able to get off the field, but somehow, some way, Washington's defense was able to find a way. I don't know how they did it, but they dug down deep and they finally were able to stop Oregon's drive. Because I thought that Oregon was going to run the rest of the clock. The way that Oregon dominated the fourth quarter on the ground, not just the fourth quarter, but the entire game on the ground was really impressive. They had 592 total yards on offense. 312 of those yards came on the ground. And we knew that Washington's defense wasn't good. And we also knew that Oregon's defense wasn't good going into this game. So, of course, there was going to be a lot of points scored. However, I was not expecting for Oregon to have over 300 yards on the ground, have the ball for over 30 minutes in this game, and still lose. For Washington, their defense came up big in the fourth quarter. The stat sheet ain't going to show you what this defense did in the big moments of this game, but if you go back and you watch the replay or the highlights of this game in the fourth quarter, Washington's defense got some major stops in this game. They also got a sack, something that Oregon's offensive line hasn't allowed too many of this season. As a matter of fact, going into this game, they only allowed 1 sack on the season. So Washington's defensive line was able to get pressure on Bo Nix and company in the fourth. And we also got to take into account that Bo Nix obviously was hobbled. He wasn't 100%. He was out of the game despite begging to come in on one of the most, if not the most important play of this game, Oregon's 4th-and-1 attempt, which Washington was able to stop and get them off the field. And then Micheal Penix, he delivered, just like he did last week in Washington's win over Oregon State. He helped engineer a 90-something yard drive, put Washington in the field goal range, and they got the win against Oregon State. This was kind of a similar situation, but not 100% exact. Micheal Penix has to respond after throwing an interception. He goes right down the field, puts Washington in position to win the game. All you need is for your defense to not sell the game. Washington holds. Both defenses we knew were not good. And they played pretty much the way that we expected them to play. However, I didn't expect Washington to get ran over or bulldozed on the ground the way they did. And Oregon, defensively, they kind of played they played exactly how I thought they would play. Washington's offense with these receivers were way too talented to get shut down. Many people were quick to reference Oregon and Georgia trying to compare the defenses and things like that. But I was really telling people like, bro, Oregon and Georgia are not even on the same planet when it comes to defense. And I know that you do have Georgia's former defensive coordinator, but Oregon's defense is going to take a while to rebuild. Maybe they need to hit that transfer portal up after the season or something, but their secondary has some huge problems. So if you thought, as a Ducks fan, that Oregon secondary was going to be able to slow down Micheal Penix and company, you kind of were, maybe you were overlooking Washington's personnel, because these receivers are all NFL caliber wide receivers. So there was no way that Oregon's defense, with the fact that they struggled to get pressure on the quarterback all season, they haven't been good getting off the field in third down situations. There just wasn't really too many ways I could have seen Oregon getting off the field, which is why I picked Washington to cover. But at the same time, I didn't see Washington winning this game. Now, I knew they had a chance, but for them to win this game, going on the road against Oregon, it was going to take a brilliant effort. And Oregon is a really tough place to win at. Prior to this loss, they had one of the longest home field win streaks in college football. I forgot the exact amount of games, but it's been some time since Oregon last suffered a loss at home. And it took Washington playing their best football to do so, and a little bit of defense. And Washington's defense has kind of played a little bit better in the second half of games over the course of the last couple of weeks. They got gashed on the ground against Oregon State, came back in the second half, made adjustments. Oregon State's run game didn't really do anything in the second half. So Washington earns their 8th win of the season. They're 8-2. They still are pretty much in the mix for the Pac-12 championship. Meanwhile, you have Oregon. They still control their own destiny when it comes to getting to the Pac-12 championship. But when it comes to their college football playoff hopes, they're pretty much in the drain. And along with pretty much the Pac-12 conference playoff hopes as a whole. But we're going to talk about that a little bit later. But before I begin, the last thing I wanted to talk about, Oregon's running backs, Bucky Irving, Noah Whittington, they were sensational. I mean, every time these guys were toting the rock, it was damn near a first down. Every single time. And you look at Oregon, I just feel like a large reason why the Huskies won was because they got out to a faster start. And I alluded to that when I did my preview and prediction for this game, that if Washington was going to win or have a chance at pulling off the upset, they couldn't afford to start out slow. Washington hasn't really been a great team on the road this year because they have gotten off to slow starts. Happened against UCLA. However, in this game, they actually were clicking from the get-go. Oregon actually was the team that started off kind of slow offensively. And it wasn't like they got shut down or anything like that, but they did have the fumble early. So Washington got out to the faster start, and it kind of set the tone for the game. So Oregon, your playoff hopes are pretty much in the drain, but you still do have a shot at playing for the Pac-12 championship. You do have to play a really good Utah team this weekend. But Oregon, I think this season definitely has been a huge success. I don't really think anybody expected Oregon to be as good as what they have been up to this point. Bo Nix is playing at an insanely high and efficient level. It's just that the Huskies went on the road and they executed at a really high level. And Micheal Penix is showing a lot of people, hey, Bo Nix isn't the only quarterback in the Pac-12 that's good. Micheal Penix has been one of the best stories of this college football season. And if you are somebody who is a big fan of the draft, like myself, keep your eyes on Micheal Penix during the NFL draft process. I promise you, a lot of people are going to start talking about him once they start observing him and they start seeing how much arm talent he has. Yeah,